Alright, what we're going to do now is we are going to build a worm compost bin. Vermiculture. This is my introduction to vermiculture, which is basically worm farming. Um, so what we do is we're going to drill some holes in the top and for vents for air circulation, which is important because we need the air circulation. And we're going to drill some holes in the bottom to get some of the drainage out, some of the liquid that drains out. And what you do is you fill your bin up with what's bedding, which is just shredded newspaper. Some people use peat moss. Some people use coconut husks. And if you want, you can just use newspaper. It has to be just the black and white. You can't have any inks on it, no glossy paper, nothing like that. And that's the start of the bedding. You can mix leaf mold and peat moss as your bedding. Just depends on what you have available and how far you want to go with this. I had to buy these bins. I didn't have any actual bins lying around, but they were $7 a piece. So these are 18-gallon totes, Rubbermaid totes. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna put some holes in it. Okay, that's the vented lid, and that is the vented bottom. Just randomly punched holes in it. No rhyme or reason. And then I put a small layer on the sides just to get some cross breeze. I don't know. Like I said, I'm new at this, so this is gonna be my first run. So hopefully the little guys will be able to breathe. So then what you can do is you can take some screen from like a window or a door or something, from your screen door, and glue it or tape it down here so you don't get any bugs or anything in there. Really shouldn't get any bugs in it as long as you don't overfeed the worms and you don't leave a lot of food in there. You got to bury the food so they can get to it, but it also keeps the bugs down, fruit flies and things. And if you do get fruit flies, what you have to wind up doing is just stop feeding them for a few days to let them catch up with the amount of food that you've put in there. Overfeeding worms is just a recipe for flies and bugs and stuff. So, and besides, worms are pretty cool about just hanging out as long as they have food and they're warm, and they're not subject to a lot of dark. You want to have a dark bin, non-see-through, because they don't like light, and they actually will run away from the light, and that'll anger them. And believe it or not, worms will leave. They'll just crawl out, and they'll just leave your bin behind. So there's stories of people coming home and having their bins empty and the worms all over the place. So you just gotta keep an eye on it and make sure that you're feeding them right and treating your worms right. And what you'll do is that you'll get it's called a worm casting, which is essentially just worm poo, and it's an amazing fertilizer for your garden. You can make compost tea out of it. And I really got the idea from Web Cajun. I kind of saw him do it, and I said, that's actually not a bad idea. So it sparked a thought in my head, and I just said, hey, I'll try it out. I know where I go to the garden center for a gallon of compost tea is, $7 or $8. So what this does is that, I just make it myself. And I don't have to pay anybody to do it. I just paid for the worms, paid for the tote, and that'll wind up paying for itself by the summer when I start my new, garden again. So it's too cold here in New England, so we're gonna actually have to keep this inside. You can keep it in your garage as long as it's warm enough, But I intend on putting this in my basement, and just as long as they're happy and they're not crawling all over the place, I don't think my wife will care. So that's it so far. Now we gotta get the bedding ready. Okay, so what you want to start to do is you want to put your bedding in. This is just a piece of cardboard, and it's wet. You want to make sure that it's not dripping, sopping wet. So you just put that in the bottom, and then what we're going to do is, you can't see that, but this is shredded newspaper. Luckily I have a shredder that shreds it really nicely. And you want to make sure it's wet also, but you don't want to be able to wring any water out of it. And if it does have water that's dripping off it, you want to either add more newspaper or let it dry out a little bit. So just be gentle and don't go crazy with the amount of water you put in there. And that is just a little bit too wet. I'm going to probably wring it out a little bit. Then what you do is you put that in there. And worms love newspaper and cardboard. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of soil from my compost bin in there. And then we just put the worms on top of it. Let them do the work. Let them bury themselves. Don't mix them up in it. Let them get adjusted to it. If you shock them too much, I guess they don't like that. So let's put the stuff in. And I got 2 pounds. And my little wormies are in here. You can't see that, but what they say is just put them on top and let the worms do the digging. And then bury themselves. So. I don't know if you can see them squirming around there. It's pretty dark in here. So they really don't like light. So I'm in my basement and they are going to be down here. It's warm enough for them. They can actually go pretty cold temperatures, around 40 degrees. But once it gets too cold, they kind of stop eating and they just kind of huddle into a ball. And they stop doing any real composting, so we don't want that. We want them to be warm and productive. Check that bag a little bit. Not really sure what that is, but it doesn't look like a worm. So, and that is a big ball of worms. So, and that's pretty much it. That's the exciting life of a worm farmer, or at least hope to be a worm farmer. And we'll come back in a couple days and check on them and see how they're doing. What you want to do now is you want to leave them alone. You want to let them get acclimated, and you want to let them kind of dig their way down and get situated in the bedding. And then what you do is you start feeding them. You don't want to just start tossing food in right away. Just a little bit at a time. It's still warm enough outside that my compost bin outside will actually still be working and useful. So you leave the lid off for now, and about a day you leave the lid off, and then let them dig down and do their thing. And what I'll do is, while that's happening, I'm going to put the mesh screening on the lid, and that's it. Wow, that is a lot of worms. Now these are red wigglers. These are the composting worms. You can't use earthworms. Alright, what I did was I sacrificed an old screen window and cut the screen out. And then I glued over the vent holes. Just use hot glue gun, on all the vent holes, so no little critters can get in or out.